The Forgotten Manor. In a small desolate village tucked away in the hills, there stood an ancient manor. Locals called it the House of Whispers. Abandoned for over a century, the crumbling walls and shattered windows of the manor held a dark history no one dared to uncover. But rumors persisted, of eerie lights flickering in the windows at night, faint laughter echoing from within, and shadows that moved when no one was there. The story begins with Daniel Carter, a historian and skeptic who visits the village to document the local folklore. Fascinated by the manor's ominous reputation, Daniel decides to explore it, despite the villagers' warnings. He is particularly intrigued by the tale of the manor's last owner, Eleanor Blackwood, a reclusive widow rumored to have dabbled in dark magic to summon her dead husband's spirit. One night, both Eleanor and her servants vanished without a trace, leaving behind a legacy of fear. Daniel arrives at the manor as twilight fades into darkness. Armed with a flashlight, a notebook, and a recorder, he steps into the house. The air inside is damp and suffocating, the smell of rot lingering. The walls are covered with faded portraits of the Blackwood family, their hollow eyes seeming to follow him as he moves through the house. As Daniel delves deeper, strange things begin to happen. He hears faint whispers, soft, unintelligible, yet undeniably present. The whispers grow louder, forming disjointed words. Leave, turn back. Objects begin to move on their own. A chair slides across the floor, a door creaks open, and a cold draft sweeps through the room, extinguishing his flashlight. Determined to uncover the truth, Daniel discovers a hidden passage behind a bookshelf. The passage leads to a basement filled with peculiar artifacts, old mirrors covered in dust, ceremonial daggers, and a large, circular table etched with symbols. In the center of the room lies a diary belonging to Eleanor. As Daniel flips through its brittle pages, he realizes the truth. Eleanor had conducted a ritual to bring back her husband, but the spell went horribly wrong. Instead of summoning her husband, she unleashed something malevolent. The whispers intensify, transforming into guttural growls. Shadows coalesce into a dark figure with glowing red eyes. Trapped, Daniel tries to escape, but the entity corners him, its presence freezing the air around him. In his final moments, he hears Eleanor's voice, pleading, "I'm sorry, it won't let anyone leave." The next morning, villagers find Daniel's car abandoned near the manor. His belongings are untouched, but there is no sign of him. Some say his voice can now be heard among the whispers in the manor, warning others to stay away. The story ends with a chilling shot of the manor, its windows glowing faintly as the sun sets, as if watching for its next visitor. Part 2. The Bound Spirits. A week after Daniel Carter's disappearance, his younger sister, Emma Carter, arrives in the village. Unlike her brother, Emma has always been a believer in the supernatural, having studied paranormal phenomena for years. When she hears about Daniel's obsession with the Blackwood Manor and the eerie circumstances of his vanishing, she is determined to find him, or at least uncover the truth. The villagers, still shaken by Daniel's fate, plead with Emma to stay away from the manor. The village elder, Mrs. Hargrove, reveals more about the Blackwood family's tragic past. Eleanor Blackwood wasn't the only victim of her failed ritual. Over the years, many who entered the manor disappeared or were found days later, incoherent and haunted by something they refused to describe. Emma, undeterred, equips herself with ghost hunting tools, a thermal camera, EVP recorder, sage, and a journal where she meticulously documents everything. As night falls, she ventures into the manor. The atmosphere is suffocating, heavier than Emma expected. The air seems to hum with an unnatural energy. The faint whispers begin almost immediately, as if the house recognizes her. This time, the whispers are more distinct, calling her name. Emma, Emma, help us. Emma sets up her equipment in the main hall. As she scans the room with her thermal camera, she notices a cold spot near an old piano. The EVP recorder crackles, and a woman's voice emerges, faint but clear. "He won't let us leave. Beware the mirrors." The warning unsettles Emma, but her determination strengthens. She follows the cold spot into the study, where she finds Daniel's notebook. His last entry is incomplete, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "The basement. It's alive. Don't." As Emma reads, she feels a presence behind her. Turning, she notices one of the mirrors in the room reflecting not just her, but shadowy figures standing around her. She spins around, but the room is empty. The figures only exist in the reflection. Suddenly, one of them lunges at her from within the mirror, causing it to crack. A chilling laugh echoes, and the shadows in the reflection dissipate. Remembering the EVP warning, Emma realizes the mirrors are connected to the entity's power. She decides to destroy them, but knows she must first understand their purpose. Emma retraces Daniel's steps and finds the hidden passage behind the bookshelf. The basement is colder than the rest of the manor, and the symbols on the floor seem to pulse faintly, as if alive. Emma sets up her EVP recorder and begins to document the room. Suddenly, the whispers return, overlapping and chaotic. They grow louder, forming a cacophony of voices pleading, crying, and screaming. The air grows icy, and the shadows begin to swirl around her. The EVP recorder captures a chilling command: "Complete the ritual, or he will claim you too." Emma realizes the entity is feeding on the trapped souls, including Daniel's. To free them, she must complete Eleanor's ritual, but doing so could unleash the entity fully. As Emma studies the symbols and Eleanor's diary, she learns the ritual requires a personal sacrifice, a piece of the soul of the person performing it. The diary warns that the entity, known as the Devourer, thrives on despair and fear. If Emma's resolve falters, it will consume her entirely. With no other option, Emma begins the ritual. As she chants the incantation, the room erupts with supernatural energy. The shadows converge into a towering figure with glowing red eyes. It speaks in a voice that shakes the very ground. "You cannot win. They are mine forever." Emma fights to stay focused, clutching a locket that belonged to Daniel. Her voice wavers as the entity lashes out, but she pushes through, pouring her love for her brother into the ritual. The symbols on the floor blaze with light, and the shadows scream in agony. When the ritual ends, Emma collapses, her strength drained. The basement is eerily quiet. As she looks around, she sees faint, glowing figures, spirits, rising from the floor and ascending, their whispers now soft and grateful. Among them she sees Daniel, who pauses to smile at her before vanishing into the light. Emma stumbles out of the manor as dawn breaks, clutching Daniel's notebook. The house is silent, its dark energy seemingly gone. The villagers later report that the manor appears less foreboding, as if its curse has been lifted. But Emma knows the truth. The Devourer wasn't destroyed, only weakened. As she leaves the village, she can't shake the feeling that the entity is still watching, waiting for someone else to disturb its slumber. Part 3. The Return of the Devourer. Several months have passed since Emma Carter's daring ritual to release the trapped souls in the Blackwood Manor. Though the village now feels calmer, the scars of the past remain. Emma has returned to her studies, attempting to move past the haunting memories of the manor. But something lingers, an unsettling feeling that she's never truly escaped its grip. Her nights are plagued by nightmares of shadows lurking just beyond her sight, of whispers that call her name in the dark. Most disturbing of all, she has begun seeing fleeting glimpses of her brother, Daniel, in her dreams. Only now he's not the same. His once warm smile is twisted into a mournful expression, his eyes darkened with an unfathomable sadness. Emma dismisses it as the result of trauma. But one fateful evening, she receives a cryptic message. It's a letter, postmarked from the village where Blackwood Manor stands, despite her belief that the area had been abandoned. The letter reads, "Emma, the house is not done with us. It calls, it waits, and it's coming for you. You must return before it takes everything. It never truly leaves." Despite her reservations, Emma knows she cannot ignore the letter. She returns to the village, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the manor's curse is far from over. Upon arriving, she finds the once quiet village now consumed by an eerie tension. The villagers are on edge, their eyes filled with fear as they whisper of strange occurrences. Pets going missing, people hearing footsteps in their homes when no one is there, and children speaking of a man in the shadows. As Emma approaches the manor, she feels the oppressive weight of its presence once more. The house stands as it always did, its windows like eyes, watching her every move. The front door creaks open on its own, as if inviting her back inside. She hesitates for only a moment before stepping across the threshold, her resolve firm. Inside, the manor feels alive. The air is thick with an unnatural energy, and the walls pulse as if breathing. Emma walks through the rooms, her footsteps echoing unnervingly in the silence. The portraits of the Blackwood family now appear to be watching her, their eyes following her every movement. The temperature drops sharply as she approaches the basement door. She reaches for the handle, but is interrupted by a voice, a familiar voice. It's Daniel. His voice echoes from the darkness, calling her name softly. "Emma, you shouldn't have come back." Emma freezes, her heart racing. She knows the voice isn't really her brother. It can't be. But the anguish in his tone is undeniable. She forces herself to open the door and descend into the basement once again. As she enters the basement, the familiar symbols on the floor are gone. In their place, an enormous pulsating black mass has taken shape. The walls are now covered in strange markings, new symbols, more intricate and ominous than before. The air is thick with a sense of dread. Suddenly the mass shudders, and a deep guttural voice emanates from within it. "You thought you could banish me. You thought you could control me. But I am eternal, and now you belong to me." The devourer has returned, stronger than before, fed by the fear and darkness that lingered in the manor. Emma realizes that her previous ritual didn't destroy the entity. It merely bound it to the house, waiting for the right moment to strike again. And now, it has found that moment. The shadows in the room stretch and writhe, taking on monstrous shapes. The figure of Daniel appears before her, his body twisted and contorted. His eyes are hollow, his face a mask of sorrow and pain. "Emma, help me. It's too late." Emma is overwhelmed by the entity's power, but she refuses to surrender. She remembers the locket, the one she used during the ritual, and clutches it tightly in her hand. Her voice trembling, she begins to chant the incantation from Eleanor's diary, the only way she knows to confront the devourer. But this time, something is different. The house itself seems to fight back. The floor beneath her cracks open, and the walls close in, trying to swallow her whole. The devourer's voice fills the room, mocking her efforts. "You are nothing. "You cannot stop me. Your brother is mine, and soon, so will you be." Just as the entity lunges toward her, Emma feels a surge of warmth. The locket in her hand begins to glow, and she realizes that Daniel's spirit is still with her. He's fighting back, just as she is. Together they can defeat the entity. Emma presses forward, her voice rising in strength as she completes the incantation. The room erupts in blinding light. The devourer shrieks in agony, its form beginning to unravel. The dark mass disintegrates into nothingness, leaving behind a lingering silence. When the light fades, the manor is still. The oppressive energy is gone, and the house seems to breathe its last sigh. Emma stands in the basement, breathless and exhausted, but victorious. She feels Daniel's presence one last time. A fleeting, gentle touch on her shoulder. He's at peace now. As she leaves the manor for the final time, Emma knows that the entity has been banished, not just from the house, but from the world. She turns back for one last glance, but the manor is no longer there. In its place is a vast, empty field, untouched by time. Emma returns to the village, determined to leave the past behind. The manor is gone, and with it, the darkness that had haunted her family for generations. But as she walks away, she can't shake the feeling that something is still watching her, waiting in the shadows.